February 24th, 2022. That, of course, was the date the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. And that taking place, of course, lives have been altered, lives have been shattered, both personally, professionally, and everything in between. And now, Life as being this globally minded podcast focusing mainly on careers, but also the impacts those careers have on people's lives, I didn't want to gloss over this major event in world history. So I do have this guest. Her name is Elina Beketova. She is Ukrainian. She had a life within Kiev prior to this full-scale invasion taking place, and of course, completely interrupted. But in speaking with her, I think it's inspirational in what, one, she's doing, but then also, two, the stories that she shares of everyday Ukrainians and how they're soldiering on, and pardon the pun there, how they are still moving their lives forward, again, both personally and professionally speaking. So I really wanted to shed some light on this topic, on this issue, and I hope you do find some value in this conversation. So why don't we get started? All right, well, first up, I do want to share some of Elina's backstory because I think to fully appreciate what she's going to share today, you really need to have a good understanding of where she was and where she is right now and what she's presently doing. So here's a clip of that.
I have two majors, which is journalism and clinical psychology. But all my life, I've been working as a journalist, editor, and television anchor. So actually, I started my career as a print journalist back in many years ago in Crimea. This is where I'm from. Then I moved to Kharkiv, which is in the east of Ukraine, and then I lived in Kiev for many years. So this is where I was engaged in all types of journalism world and the professions that we can imagine. Then I was kind of burned out, and I had this emotional burnout, and I decided to get another degree, which is psychology. So for several years, I was studying and doing a lot of research and learning about this wonderful psychological profession and sphere. So when actually the full-scale invasion started, I was thinking about that I would stay in Kiev, but unfortunately I'm not as brave as I thought about myself. So I fled to Germany, where my good friend lives, and then from that point I applied for different fellowships that were connected with Ukraine, because this is what I want to do right now, talk and write about Ukraine. So this is how I got to the Center for European Policy Analysis, CEPA. And basically, I'm writing about Ukraine and explaining a lot of things about Ukraine to all the audiences that may have any questions.
Now, Elina herself has this really unique background, one being this highly skilled journalist, and on the other hand, being, a trained psychologist. So what I really wanted to understand was, how does she cope with all that she is seeing, all that she is witnessing, all that she is hearing? How do you kind of compartmentalize, the personal side of things and then also the professional? So here's a clip of Elina explaining this.
As a professional, as someone who is covering this and certainly, is connected to this issue intimately, right? I'd like to know, and this might be a difficult question to answer, but how do you manage that? How are you able to, go about doing your job as well as that you do, whilst managing these emotions and the stresses and the pressures and the anxiety and all these things you were just speaking of? Again, this might be a bit of a personal question, but I think all the same, it'd be insightful for listeners to hear.
Yeah, I think that it's a wonderful question. Thank you for that. I think it's just as we all have different anxieties and have to deal with them every day. It's the same for me. Sometimes I'm looking through some pictures and I'm completely gone, meaning that I don't work because I can't concentrate and I can focus on my work, like on writing or doing something, because I'm just thinking about someone, something, or I simply can cry. That's okay to cry, like we are all human beings, and this is how we have to deal with our emotions. We are not robots, it's okay not to be okay. And this is what happens to me every day. So sometimes I can be like absolutely structured because I have this list of things I have to do, but then like some detail can absolutely distract me in I would say, this emotional way, and then I'm not there. But it's okay. This is all about our human being nature, and that it's good to give yourself this minute or even 1 hour, that's okay. I think I just don't have the time for my depressive side right now, meaning that there is nothing bad in a depressive mode sometimes that we can have. It's okay because we deal with a lot of thoughts and existential thoughts. But like right now, I'm in a mode that I have to do a lot of things. So I just don't let myself to be completely gone in some of the situations. So I can feel like emotions and everything, and I let myself do that. But I think that I'm more trying to, like, as I understand that I'm in a safe place, my country is at the war. So I have to do more right now. That is why I just don't let myself to be absolutely depressed, because it will definitely stop all my activity.
Now, in speaking with Elina, I really want to take advantage of this opportunity to hear more about the impacts of this unjust war on Ukrainians and just how it is affecting the people, how it is affecting their lives, their mindset, everything in between. So here's a clip of Elina explaining this.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's absolutely unapplicable question right now for Ukrainians, because we can plan something just for 3 days in a row. And when I communicate with my friends in Kiev, like, how are you guys? Are you planning something? It's still there, like 3-4 days. Imagine, like, if you could plan your life for the next 3-4 days, and that's it. And this is like a lot of ambiguity that you need to handle every day, because you can't plan. And especially those people who are who like to plan, or who are structured, or who just it's just when we have plans, the level of our anxiety decreases. So if you don't have it, then you're just full of anxiety. It's all our Ukrainians today full of anxiety, and just with a great wish and hope that the war will be over, so that we could just rebuild, restore, and live the life. I'm not telling the previous life, because it will be different, but still the life.
All right. Well, this next clip focuses on the coverage of the war. And to this point, a lot of it has been militaristic in nature, focusing on the battles or the after effects of what's taken place. And of course, that information is important, but also too, I think it's critically important to be focusing on everyday Ukrainians, their stories, what's taking place. And obviously, that sort of bleeds in from the personal to the professional and back and forth. So here's a clip of Elina explaining, what's taking place within Ukraine right now for everyday Ukrainians.
I worry that it's almost a desensitization that could take place from this a little bit, from people that are just seeing like, oh, okay, here's another city that's just being shelled, and it is what it is, and okay, all right, I'm just going to keep scrolling on. But what for me pulls me into it more deeply, at least, are the stories of the people, the people that are being affected by this. Certainly I have sympathy with, the soldiers that are trying to defend their country. And of course, that goes without saying. But it's the stories of just everyday Ukrainians. We were just speaking about this earlier. And I'd be curious to know about whether you have any stories to share that sort of illustrate this, that make this issue real for people.
Yeah, definitely, Christopher. And thank you so much for talking about people, because definitely it's all about people right now, people who are defending the country, people who just live and try to maintain the economy and still, work, because we need to be self-sufficient and everything. But that's very complicated and very hard. But I don't know, it's if I just look on my Facebook and read the stories of people, it's in many cases that I see like a friend of mine or someone's friend who died, or who was injured. So it's like we have to deal with this type of like losses every day. So it's the trauma of loss. And it doesn't matter what a person goes through. So for instance, where handles it's the situation when a person, one of my friends, she came back to Kherson after liberation, but then after flooding, she still has to go somewhere else because it's not like it's very hard to with the old conditions there right now. So and even after liberation, the territory was shelled by the Russian forces. So she just wrote me, like I have to leave again. And this phrase, like again, like you are living somewhere, you try to come back to your place, rebuild, like kind of restore your world. I would say it like this. And then you have to move somewhere again because there is another problem, there is another tragedy. So another friend, she's from Aleshki, that's the temporarily occupied territory, unfortunately. And I assume that there are no there is no power in many of the settlements right now. So I can't reach her. And, that's this feeling of uncertainty of like it relates to everything and everyone.
Now, this last clip that I'm going to show you today is one of the most uplifting, I think, in terms of this conversation. And it speaks to this point of everyday Ukrainians, despite the hardship, despite the tragedy, despite all the things that they're going through, there is still a certain energy, that is reverberating throughout the country. And this is affecting people's lives personally and professionally. And yeah, I think it's worth hearing these stories because, again, this is the stuff that kind of is representative of the human spirit of, people continuing on despite really trying circumstances and challenges.
So Ukraine has an energy of life. It doesn't matter what happens and regardless of the circumstances, because people would write me that, Elina, Kiev has a lot of new restaurants and like the new, like just opened. And whenever I look through the Instagram stories, people go to concerts and performances. And this is what makes it, it doesn't matter what happens. We want to live, and in some other territories that even after flooding right now, after the destruction of Kakhovka Dam, a lot of regions from all over like Ukraine, from different parts of Ukraine, from abroad, they started delivering aid there because we understand that people need it. It's all about that, you have this neighbor who is always attacking you, and you understand that that's a crazy neighbor, but still you understand that you can help, and you help how you can, So that's like this philosophy, and I think that it makes us very resilient, that regardless of anything, we will be fighting because we just try to help, and we try to have this, the energy of life, I would call it.
Well, I would like to draw things to a close here, but as always, I encourage you to listen to the full-length audio version of this conversation. And you can do so wherever you access your podcast. Just do that search for Life as a ... And while I do have you here, I would encourage you to like or subscribe. It does go a long ways, and I think it's helpful. I mean, putting this content in front of others, it's only going to enrich or provide new ways of thought, pathways forward for a lot of young people. Liking and subscribing is the only way that this YouTube algorithm knows that the content matters and is worth pushing out. So again, I would appreciate that like or subscribe. And of course, don't forget to tune in to the next episode of Life as a. It'll be coming out right next week. So until then, I'll see you later.